So home energy retrofits is the title. I'm going to do just a couple little climate statements first before getting into it, just to motivate it. We are in an existential crisis with stronger, larger storms, floods, insurance costs will be rising, famines, civil unrest, refugees, wars, and oxygen producing plankton dying in the oceans. These are serious issues. And species losses. Oh, and there's handouts. Yeah, you want to give those out?
Or now?
Now.
Oh, okay. This is a handout that we created. It's not this slideshow. It's another.
It's a subset.
He'll explain it.
It's a subset, and it's got all the data that you need if you want to figure your carbon footprint. It's got all the factors and basically the formulas, and so. It's wanting to go on its own. It's okay. Anyway, over a period of time, we're seeing that the number of days over 95 degrees are increasing. And this is, the key has 10 days, 0 to 10, 10 to 20, 20 to 35. But this progression is happening. And in Denver, since 1970 to 2015, we've gone from 7 days to basically 20 days over 95 degrees. It's real, it's here. And so with that, we're going to talk about figuring out your own energy situation in your house and more generally in your life, determining how much you might decide that you want to improve if you do decide you want to improve. And I have 4 tiers, and I say what would be suggested things. And then how catching renewables can be done and how keeping the energy that you have in your house. I like catch it and keep it for energy. And then a few miscellaneous. So first thing in studying your house is get an energy audit. And they do a blower door, they use infrared cameras, professional guys, and you'll understand your heat gain and your heat loss characteristics, winter and summer, summer and winter. And Excel in the past, and I believe they still do, subsidize it to a certain extent. And anyway, the energy auditors are not focused on taking it all the way, they're taking on it to be an improvement. At what I consider kind of a tier 1. Here's an energy audit with a blower door. This is the homeowner. That's the energy auditor. And the meter on the tarp is saying it's maintaining a 50 Pascal difference. Earlier in the series, you saw a blower door demonstration here. And at a 50 Pascal difference, this house has leaks that are generating 409 cubic feet per minute of air infiltration, which is pretty darn good. It can be 2,000, 3,000, 5,000 cubic feet per minute. And because John's worked a lot on his. Now, when the blower door is running, if you have an infrared camera, you'll find some little spot where it's sneaking around the edge. This is summer or winter cold air coming in. Where the bluish, purple blue is cold and yellow is very warm. Now, to know what you use, Peter Drucker, a management consultant in the 70s, 80s, said if you can't measure it, you can't improve it. You don't really know how to go through. So on the next sheets, you're going to see how you're going to calculate using your Excel bills, your electricity, your natural gas, your water, your sewer, energy use, and your consequential carbon footprint from that. And then also gasoline or diesel that you can, and food consequence of your eating habits and your driving habits in your driving car. first units that you need to kind of know, not to have memorized, but a British thermal unit is called a BTU, and that's the basis, really, for things in the US, not the metric system basis, but the US. And what it is if you think you got a pint of Guinness Stout or a pint of milk or a pint of water, raise it 1 degree Fahrenheit, because that's an English unit rather than a metric unit, and a pint is an English unit, and that is 1 British thermal unit. And this is on the handouts. These sheets are on the handouts. And then a kilowatt hour of electricity is the energy of 3,412 BTUs. And 1 therm of natural gas is 100,000 BTUs. But if you divide it by 3,412, you'd come out, that's 29.3 kilowatt hours. And a gallon of gasoline is 128,000 BTUs. So if you want to do calculations to understand your energy use in total, you can go through all that. By the way, when we get to the point where we're going to calculate how many tons of CO2 we emit, a ton is 2,000 pounds for people that are not familiar. A metric ton is 2,200 pounds because it's 1,000 kilograms, kilogram being 2.2 pounds. So now, if you use a therm of natural gas, you generate 13.446, and you have this in the handout, pounds from a therm of natural gas. Electricity changes on whatever network you're on, but if you're using the Excel grid, their latest data for the year 2017, 1 kilowatt hour is 1.308 pounds of generated carbon dioxide. Domestic water in Golden, the purification, the pumping up to the tanks to then let it flow down is 4.06 per 1,000 gallons of 4.06 pounds of carbon dioxide. And wastewater, the sewer line, Golden has no idea. They don't have any because they subcontracted out to Coors. Coors takes Golden's wastewater. Sounds a little bit odd, but
and turns it into beer.
no. But they do. They do the processing because Golden can't have a waste plant because Coors is right below that. So Coors takes it, and Coors has 2 waste plants, and it's contractually done by Coors. Gasoline and diesel are different. Gasoline will generate for 1 gallon when you burn it 21.6 pounds of carbon dioxide. Diesel 24.4. Now I say when you burn it, but that was not accurate. It's really 2 pounds less when you burn it. But in the processing to get you the gasoline from the oil, or to get you the diesel from the oil, there's a 2 pound carbon footprint in the processing. So that's a consequential cost.
Excuse me,
Yeah.
2 pounds more for diesel? in
Two,
production
no, each of these.
versus gas?
This would be 19.6 when you burn it, and that would be 22.4 when you burn it. But the refinery had that as a carbon expense going up. Thank you for the clarification. Now, this page which you have in there was a sample of how you would do a calculation if you wanted to understand your consequences. You get your Excel bills, you call them and say, I want a year's worth of data, and you take your natural gas. I had back in 2002, 1,095 therms of natural gas that I used. You multiply it by 13.446, which was the number that was on that slide, and that comes out 14,702 pounds. Electricity that year, 4,085 kilowatt hours. That gives you so many pounds. Water, 60,000 gallons. 60,000 gallons at 4 pounds per K gallon, 1,000 gallons. And wastewater, now the number I got here, I got it from Fort Collins because they're in a similar position at the foot of some mountains, and Golden has no idea. Golden gave it to me in pieces. I had to get their whole water treatment for a whole year for the drinking water, and I had to do their whole electricity bill for the treatment, for the pumping, and then do the calculation because they'd never really worried about it. So if you take all of that, the house was a little bit over 10 tons, English tons of CO2. Now, for my gas and my food, that was a year I drove a big van a lot, going back east and back. And so I had 1,400 gallons at 21.6 pounds. So that was more than the house. And then I ate a high beef content diet, and you'll see where you get the conversion of that in a few more slides. But a high beef content diet, even though I had lots of veggies and fruit, was 6,600 pounds to feed me. So gas and food were 18.5 tons. So I did 28.5 tons of CO2. I was dirty. I was ruining our atmosphere. Now you'll see changes, hopefully. In 2008, well, the therms were down from 1,095 to 408 in 6 years. And the electricity, I put some PV on the roof. I put more later, but I put some photovoltaics on the roof, and I put enough to make it be more than I used. So I was actually negative on my electricity, and I was therefore defraying Excel from using coal. And therefore that's a minus 8,699 pounds. The water, and then the wastewater. And by the way, between the water and the wastewater, I figured based on how much of my water went for the lawn, which doesn't go down the sewer to have to be processed. And what I used was the off-season wastewater, the water as my wastewater for the whole year. So that's one way, because you're not processing everything that's sprinkling the garden, sprinkling the lawn. And then, and my gasoline went way down. And so I got, on the house, I got to be negative, a minus 1.5 tons, although the car and food still came out 4 tons. So I was still above zero if I count food, car, house. Now, 3 more years with more photovoltaics and my first solar addition. The natural gas, a far more surplus on the electricity, and so the water was pretty much in the same range. So the carbon was minus 7 tons. So the house went to minus 7 ton carbon footprint, which means I was helping clean up other people's by taking load off of Excel that they would have had to do. And the car and food, well, I still had about 3 tons. So my personal everything, but I did get minus at about 4 tons negative that year. So, but if you want to figure yours, you get your Excel bills, you get your water bill, and you apply the factors that are here, and you have them on your sheet, and you can know. What you know then, though, is you know the personally addressable, the stuff that you have control over. You don't have any control over the Department of Defense, the airport construction, the road construction, and those use a lot. So if everybody did all of this stuff, we would do amazing things for cleaning up the carbon, but still society, where you're not personally able to control it, has a consequence. I'm going to just come back for a second and say, back in 2002, the house was cold in winter and hot in summer. It was a very uncomfortable house, really cold in winter and really hot in summer. Summer days I went out with a hose, sprayed the roof to turn the attic into an evaporative cooler. It helped a lot. Instead of having the house go up 22 degrees just over the period of 5 hours in the middle of the day, it only went up 7 degrees. But the attic was so very poorly insulated. So with a lot more insulation, I don't go out and spray water on the roof. But that was an experiment to see what was happening. Now, it says at the bottom here, and it's cut off a little bit, the house was substantially more comfortable when I got to 2008, and it continued to get more comfortable after that. So you end up saving money on a lot of this, and you get greater comfort, both. Now, you can go beyond saving money, where you're doing it for other purposes, and I've been known to go beyond that point. But I have grandkids, so, okay. Looking at these transitions, my electricity use dropped at a certain point, and my natural gas went up at that point, and then it went along, then it dropped more. We will see, and that's from year 2000 to 2013, numbered 1 to 14 there. And so when I replaced the incandescent light bulbs with CFLs, it dropped dramatically for the electricity. And then it went kind of along, and then I got photovoltaics, more photovoltaics, more photovoltaics, and that got me, for electricity, down to negative. Do I need to turn that to this angle for you?
No, I'm good.
Okay. And then by starting to grow oranges and things in the back additions, I started to use more, so my surplus electricity went away, and the plug-in cars. Now on natural gas, you notice it jumped up when I went away from the incandescents that were heating the house in the winter. They were heating the house in the winter. So all of a sudden I have to heat the house. So my natural gas went up. So the next year, new windows. And I put on triple glazed windows, which were as good as I knew at the time. They aren't as good anymore, and they weren't as good as there was then, but I thought I was doing well. And they were vinyl, and now I would do fiberglass instead of vinyl. Fiberglass will not break its seal near as soon as vinyl. When you get temperature changes that are fast, and we get those, vinyl will little twist and warp, and its thermal rate of expansion of the vinyl is different than glass. So you get tension, and that will over time pop the seal. Fiberglass, its thermal rate of expansion is the same as glass. So it's not putting those stresses onto the glazing unit from the frame. Okay, then, so the new windows cost me $18,600 to do 25 windows and 3 slider doors. That was a lot. I didn't go out and find the cheap things because these had to go in existing holes. And you won't find things that are custom fit to your existing holes. Now, interestingly, I did a lot of added insulation, but then I got a new furnace. The new furnace cost me 1/6 as much. And I got one of the ones with the plastic tubes, a condensing furnace, and that cost 1/6 as much, and it did more to cut my gas usage. So I went from double glazed in aluminum frame windows to triple in vinyl for 18,000 plus. And I went from a 1970s 60 to 65% efficient gas furnace to a 2005 95.5% efficient furnace. So I jumped 30%, and it really cut the natural gas. So I highly recommend, if you have an old furnace, if you don't have that old a furnace, if you can get the efficiency of the furnace, if you're down in the 60s, that's a big bang for the buck. Much better than the windows. Although windows will make you a lot warmer because you won't feel that cold right there. It'll make you feel warmer, but it'll cost you 6 times as much as the furnace if you got that number of windows and doors. Now, this is just some numbers for insulation, just so you kind of know, and this is in the handout. The ones in red are things that you might blow or put into your attic. The others are information, kind of interesting, like poured concrete. It takes 12 inches of poured concrete to be R1, whereas 1 inch blown into your attic is around 3 or 3.5. So it takes 36 inches of concrete to be 1 inch of blown insulation of the usual types into your attic. That's pretty dramatic for the difference. I mean, so you want to do something to isolate that concrete from the outside or from the inside, and doing it to the outside is better than the inside. Then there's polystyrene foam. Interesting, hardwoods are half as insulating as softwoods. The density, it conducts more. And the best thing in the lot is a vacuum panel. And Germany was making vacuum panels, I don't know if they still are, that you could do your walls out of. The only thing is, if you happen to hang a picture by putting a nail in, all of a sudden that vacuum panel is not a vacuum, and the metal on both sides, you're down to nothing. So you have to be disciplined if you're doing those. Nobody's really doing them in this country, but there was a little demonstration house in 2008 set up in a park in Denver.
What is a vacuum panel?
A vacuum panel just means you have something about 1 inch wide and all the air sucked out.
So you have,
It's
you have a pump, an air pump or something?
You don't.
already?
It's made that way.
Oh, okay.
And you use that for a wall, and it's like you can get the stainless steel water bottles that are vacuum bottles, and they have a vacuum inside, and your cold drink stays cold forever, or your coffee stays warm for half of ever, you know.
Isn't that what a double pane window is?
A double pane window is not vacuum.
Oh,
It's either the early ones called thermal pane, that was the phrase in the 80s, 90s, is air inside.
there.
The better ones now are, but air does have currents and heat transfers. The better ones now have either argon or krypton, krypton being the best. We'll get to windows in a little bit, but thanks for both of those questions.
And that aerogel, is that something that's widely used or needing to be used? Or?
It is used sometimes. It goes into triple wall polycarbonate, like greenhouse stuff, and it fills with that. And it's kind of amazing because it lets 80% of the light through. So greenhouses get the light, but they're much better, but it's expensive. It's hard to puff sand. You know, I mean, if you got a popcorn puffer, it probably won't work for the sand. It's a silica. Okay, now I want you to visualize your energy usage a few different ways. The first one, an infrared camera. The infrared camera, and this is a day that was very cold, minus 22. We don't get a lot of those, but this is a few years ago we had one. So I ran out early in the morning and took pictures. And you see that window, it's losing a lot of heat. And you see that door, it's losing a lot of heat. Well, a lot is relative, because this is after I greatly improved the window with triple glazed vinyl, replacing the aluminum double glaze that didn't even have any gas. This is argon triple glaze, but still, it's losing a lot. So good windows and this was in 2003 or 4. There's better windows now. And then this is actually an outer door on top of a 5-foot, and then the old front door. So that's a lot better than it was because it's got that airlock entry. And still, it's a tough spot. It's just kind of interesting to see how much you get as a difference.
So,
Yeah.
Excel or specialists can do that kind of infrared tracking?
Yeah, your energy auditor will have a camera that will do infrared pictures.
So good to schedule them when it's really cold.
Exactly. You want to schedule when you have a big temperature difference between outside and inside. So either very cold, or if they come on a 105-degree day and you're keeping your house cool, then you'll see a different coloring pattern, but you'll see the difference. Yes. Now, other ways to visualize. You can look at your meters. You can look at your bills. You can look at what are you getting your energy from. And looking at, this is the summary page of your Excel bill. And don't look at the dollars, look at the units. And mine is kind of interestingly odd because I don't use much energy now. But anyway, and Excel, they don't know how to put a minus on things that are negative. They never learned about negative numbers. They have monopoly. They have to get a return, and they have to write. So where it says 51 kilowatt hours, it was minus 51 because I made more and put it back than I used. But no, you'll see, they don't charge me. They just don't know how to print it right. And every month, it's a ritual. I call them and say, there's a thing called a negative number. And I actually saw the head of Excel that came out for a meeting at University of Colorado, Denver, and the local head, and I explained this to them. And they both said they'd get it fixed. That's been 2.5 years ago. Now, here you see that really, if my current reading's 53,502 and the other is 53,553, the old is higher, the new is lower. In other words, it went backwards, right? But they say 51, I got it in a red circle. But down here, when they're calculating my fees, they got 0 because they were smart enough not to bill me for what I gave them. I'm glad they were that smart. And I do, it's kind of a ritual, I give them a call. Now, on the gas bill, the gas is measured in cubic feet, actually in hundreds of cubic feet, CCF, C for CENT, 100 cubic feet. It's measured that way when it goes through the meter. And it's measured that way at a constant pressure and temperature, all adjusted. So, but the thing is, the gas this month came out of one well and the gas next month came out of another well. And they all have different amounts of energy in them. So, because the different, so these are the readings, and I didn't use any gas that month. So I was 0 CCF. And so, but they take that and they multiply it by the energy factor. And the energy factor to come to therms from the CCF that month was 0.849, And so if I would have used 10 CCF, it would have been 8.49 therms. Therms is the number that is the energy. It's like, do you have 2% milk or 4% milk? How much cream is in it? How much energy is in it? And then they multiply your therms times your service. Well, first they charge you almost $14 right off the bat just for being connected. And then they have your natural gas is 26 cents, but they got 8 cents for a usage charge. That's to make it go to you per therm. They got 6.8 cents for interstate pipeline, and they got another pipe system charge of 3.3. So the per therm cost delivered is twice what they're paying for the bulk that they get. And then they put another basically $14 on for the right to serve you, for the right to be served, you pay. So anyway, it came out $14.46 to not use any. So that's why you shut it off, like Jim has cut his off, I've cut mine off. But you have to do a lot of work to get to the point where you cut it off. Now water, there's the bill that you get in Golden. And current reading is 92, previous reading, or current is 96, previous 92. So I used 4 of whatever that unit is. And that unit is 1,000 gallons. They're counting 1,000 gallons. So it's gone from 92 to 96, so I used 4. And they show you a little chart over there of last year, this year for each of the quarters. Now they've just gone from a quarterly to a monthly, but still the same kind of a game. So that 4,000. That's what a gas meter looks like. And it's interesting. Each tick on this is, well, all the way around is 1,000 cubic feet. So that's 100. That's a CCF. That's a CCF. That's a CCF. And that goes that way. There's a gear behind it. It makes that go that way. And then there's a gear behind, makes that go that way. And that go that way. Because it's just going. My meter is locked rather than cut off physically and removed. And that's what I think they do generally in homes because they don't believe you really want to have it removed. Now there's an electric meter. There's a net meter. If you have solar panels, you have a net meter because when you're using it, the meter goes up. And when you're powering to the network, the meter goes down. So it starts at 0, goes 1, 2, but then sun comes out, goes back to 1, 0, 0.999, which is -1. But you'll work your way around. So there's a net meter. And if you don't have solar panels, it won't be a net meter, it'll just go up. Now, here is a chart monitoring my solar panels and my house electrical use. The car was plugged in here, so I was red, meaning the meter was going up. A few hours later, the sun comes up, and I'm not powering the car, so now the meter's going down. And there's clouds, occasionally, a pretty day, lovely puffy clouds. In the afternoon, there's a big black cloud, so it's down longer. And then it comes up, and then another cloud, and then I plug in the car again after I've driven a bunch, and so the meter will go up. And just kind of interesting. There's a couple good days, a bad day, but kind of cool in the, and there you see I wasn't driving as much, but I had 3 good days, although they had some clouds going by. And you see, there was a snow coverage, another snow coverage, so I wasn't really getting stuff. So you can visualize your energy lots of ways, and these graphs are kind of fun. Okay, from food, greenhouse gases. Beef, not for a kilogram, not counting the bone, you use the production of the beef, if it is processed in the standard ways, is for 1 kilogram, it's 26.6 kilograms. And this is in your handout too. Lamb is almost the same. So those are the big greenhouse gas producers. Yeah.
So that's feedlot beef you're talking about?
Yeah, feedlot beef.
And what, have you done anything on the grass-fed bins?
I don't have the numbers for grass-fed. That wasn't available to me. I'm assuming it's less, but it may not be because they're belching probably just like the feedlot guys are.
Yeah, but there's a lot less ag involved.
There's a lot less ag, I agree. I eat grass-fed, because it's better for health too. Now, notice a piggy is a lot less belching and a lot less production, even though that's feedlot pigs. And chicken, fish, and eggs are all in a whole nother bracket, the whole nother bracket. And then milk, of course, there's a lot of water in milk, but it's lower. And fruit and vegetables are 0.4 kilograms of greenhouse gas for a kilogram of fruit and veggies, which is amazing.
Yeah, that's a little hard to believe, actually, when you think about, especially fruit, all the water that goes into it.
Yeah, but this is the numbers that I got for that. Okay, now if you want to not worry about figuring from your diet by piecing it up, here's from a bunch of people a footprint by type of diet, and I'll just come over and say this is in tons of CO2 equivalent per person. Tons of CO2 equivalent per person. So 3.3 tons if you're a heavy meat person, beef and lamb. And then if you're average, you're 2.5 tons or 5,000 pounds. And if you're a vegan, over there you get down to 1.5. These are ballpark numbers from USDA and a bunch of folks putting that together. So now, you can grow your own food. I'm just gonna, in your yard, you can get into crop. But now, the 4 levels of approaching your house. One, you could say, I want to save money and be more comfortable, but I don't care about climate. That gets you one level of economical things you could do. Second, you can do that and want to do a little bit more for climate, but don't want to be a little bit crazy. Third, get them more crazy and try to get to net zero. Net zero means you could possibly still have a gas line, but you're overproducing enough electricity that it washes out the gas you're using. And then finally, you can say, I want to get rid of all fossil fuels. And so you're worried about things other than just your own comfort and budget. So if you're just going for save money, get an energy audit, replace, as in all cases, replace all your light bulbs with light emitting diodes. Seal and super insulate your attic. That pays, and it makes you a lot more comfortable, to at least R80, better R90 and R100.
And it's inexpensive, isn't it?
And it's relative. You're probably blowing in cellulose, which is recycled newspaper. It's getting a lot more expensive because Linda handed me her neighbors that she's taken in newspaper the other day. Denver Post had what, 10 pages? So there's not an abundance of recycled newspaper. So cellulose is going up. But anyway.
Does cellulose hold up? I mean, over time, does it go down?
It does settle, but its R value doesn't go down. Cellulose has a benefit over fiberglass blown in that it does a little bit of air sealing because it's fiberglass, it'll float through. If there's any pressure on it, it'll float through. Cellulose, it doesn't float through as well. So it's a better air seal if you have not gone and super sealed everything before it goes in. And if you got an old house, it's unusual to take it all out. If you have Excel giving you a rebate for insulating your attic, they won't do it unless you at least get some level of sealing where you have the workman that's going to blow in the insulation, go around and do edges here, there, and yon to level 1. And that does a lot of good, but it doesn't get all the inside seams. You have to scoot everything out or suck it out to do that. So if you have an old 60% efficient furnace, it will pay over a few years to replace it with a 95% efficient, meaning one that's a condensing furnace that has the air coming in through the plastic pipe and the exhaust going out and not being very hot when it gets out through a plastic pipe out the side.
But I would add here, you really need a number of bids on those high efficiency furnace, because my experience was being gouged.
I try to do things prudently. I got a lot still to cover, and so I hope you have enough battery to run.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And then, I was 3,200 when I replaced mine, but that was in 2005.
They quoted me 13,000.
Okay. Well,
Different companies.
different companies. Okay. So if your water heater is getting old, consider going from a gas water heater, which is the typical, to an electric heat pump water heater, because electric heat pump water heaters are dramatically more efficient.
They don't cost much more either.
They don't cost much more anymore. And there's a big Excel kicker. I think it's,
A rebate?
yeah, now. I did mine before there was. Yeah, it's $600 or $700. What you have to do though is you have to get a 220 line to the water heater.
Yeah.
So you have to do the electrical. And so the rebate gets halfway eaten up depending on your electrician cost. By the way, for efficient technicians, you go to Jim Smith's website, and he's got a lot of very good people that are reasonable.
Also, you can get our app on your smartphone, and it has the same information there.
Okay. But
Peter, on the heat pump for a water heater, where do they get the heat?
it's interesting.
Underground,
Air source.
outside?
Now this is air source. It's taking it out of the, no,
Oh, it's the air in the room.
they're in the room. So in your utility room, yes, it's a very good question.
It's great to put a freezer in the same room.
Let me answer it. The concrete, if it's in your basement, is at ground temperature. Ground temperature is 54 to 48 degrees, and that is hot compared to absolute zero. And so when you're dumping cold air out of the top of your heat pump water heater, it goes down, it gets warmed up by that, and it comes in again. And it's amazingly efficient. You could do ground source, but that's a lot more expensive. This is, now you have to have a room to get it out of, but yeah. And you can run them either in a hybrid mode or in a pure heat pump mode. In the pure heat pump mode, it will not ever throw on adjunct electrical heating with cal rods. If you have it in the hybrid mode, if you run 3 showers in a row where people sing arias while they're in the shower, you know, it will heat using the cal rods. And the other, they will get cold and they won't sing as long. But that's the recovery rates are explained. But in the, now what I,
Put it next to my freezer, because the freezer's a heat pump that's generating.
right, the other way, yeah.
Really good idea.
Yeah, if you pair it, I agree. Okay, windows, if they're really, really bad, and this is, you're going for money and comfort. If your windows are single glazed, aluminum, you really want to do it because you're losing amazingly. So it'll give you a lot. Okay, now, if you want to save costs and gain comfort, but do a little bit more for society and the climate. A lot of the same things, but now there's something you can do. And if you have a spade and a shovel and you got a water bottle because you're going to sweat, you dig around your foundation and you put it, and you're going to see pictures of this, and you run insulation up against the outside of the concrete for 4 foot down. And the insulation put in there, 4-inch thick, polyiso, and it'll give you R25 to R28 on the outside of the foundation. Now your foundation was either 8 or 12 inches, so it's R1. You're adding R25. You're changing the whole game for your basement. And then consider the furnace if it's appropriate, and consider the water heater. By the way, If the water heater's not old, wait until it's old, but go to the electric heat pump, because eventually the natural gas supply is going to be very expensive when the fracking is done. And the fracking, they've been getting all the easy stuff. It's going to be gone. Okay, and then consider adding daylight. This is a sun tunnel. It's 22 inches. That's a sun tunnel. And you notice the color of that. That's daylight color. These bulbs are daylight. These are warm light bulbs. But 1, 2, 3, 4, Jim's got 4, 22 inch. 22 inch. You can get 10 inch, and they'll give you the fifth of the light. You can get 14 inch, and it'll give you 40% of the light of one of these. In a bathroom, maybe the 14 inch is good. And I don't know any place that the 10 inch is good. But they sell those because people think they want to get one. But in a living room, you want to go 14 inch, and they light amazingly. So sun tunnels by Velux are the best brand. There's also Solitubes by SolarTube. They're not as good. Hail busts them up more. They have lots of gimmicky kits you can have, and you can pay an awful lot to get not much light. I recommend what Jim has, Velux Sun Tunnels. Velux is a Danish company. Their factory's in the US. They're designed very well. They look good, work good, last a long time. And they give you great daylight color instead of, so your camera photos are better. They're assuming daylight. Things will look yellow if you have all your lighting like that inside. But go big on them. Okay. Then if you want to get to net zero, then you're really going to want to upgrade the furnace for sure, and replace the water heater for sure, dig the foundations for 4 inches or more of foam, 4 foot or deeper if you can go deeper. But the foam I'm talking about comes in 4x4 or 4x8, and you'll see pictures. And then consider more seriously the windows, even if you have already low E vinyl double glaze, if you have the argon filled double glaze. If you really want to get to net zero, consider going big on that. And big means you go to a top rated window that'll last a long time and will be very good thermally. And add solar on the roof if you haven't already, so that you end up not sponsoring a coal mine partially. Excel's grid is getting better and better. The amount of coal is dropping in their mix because they're adding wind, they're adding solar. And they are doing a lot of natural gas, and natural gas has a couple kinds of carbon footprint. The burning of it, and it's cleaner than coal when it's burned, but all the lines have leaks, and the fracking has leaks, and those things, if it gets to 3%, and in many places where they've done studies, it's 6%, it's worse than coal above 3% for the greenhouse gas, because the methane leaks are really bad for the climate. They are a very bad greenhouse gas. Although they wear off in 80 years instead of 1,000 years.
Is there a system behind the color coding here?
I just try to make things stand out for my benefit.
Okay.
But there's sort of a new important at this level. Okay, now if you really want to go all the way, get rid of all fossil fuels. So now you really have to super seal and super insulate your attic to a very tight R100. We're going to talk about a whole new sealing method that I have just learned about in the last week. And it's amazing, and it's going to revolutionize home building. It's really new, and you'll see it happening yesterday. And then do get a heat pump water heater for sure. Thicken the walls. Now in the last one, I had, and I didn't say it, do your north walls, if you want to get to net zero, do your north walls, thickening them to R60. don't worry about the rest of the walls, but your north walls will do a lot for you because that's where you're cold anyway, and it'll make it a lot. When I did my first wall thickening, I did the north bedroom, and I was playing around, not knowing anything about what I was doing, but it worked out. And what was the coldest room in the house became the warmest room in the house.
How did you do that?
You'll see. You will see it happen right here on the magic of this television. And make your next car electric. Eat more veggies and chicken and pork rather than beef and lamb. And then at the end of doing all those things, you replace your gas furnace, even if it was an efficient one, and your air conditioning or your evaporative cooler with heat pumps like Jim has here. Okay? He's getting all his electricity from solar panels, and he's running this whole place on electricity.
It's one heat pump, 3 wall units.
Yeah.
It's not 3 heat pumps.
It is one heat pump on the outside and 3. Now, the efficiency, if you have one on the out to one on the end, you get a higher efficiency than having one on the out and 2 on the end or 3 on the end or 4. You get a better SEER value. SEER value is now up to 42. If you know air conditioners, 15 gets you money from Excel. 42 is almost 3 times as good as 15.
And
So-
I can extract heat from outside, and how far below zero?
Well, on yours, I don't know, but on mine, I can go down to minus 14 degrees. But you have 3 inside to 1 outside, so you probably can go down to about minus 5. But I tried to find on the
What's
wall.
really cool is that you're not burning any fuels.
Right.
You're creating the heat just using electricity.
Yeah. It's like a refrigerator running to do the house, to do the building, and it'll run both ways. It will cool or it will heat. And the efficiencies are amazing. Okay. So now, never do a job halfway. Now I'm saying that economically. Don't do a job halfway if you're going to have to come back and do it more. In other words, and I got a great picture, but before I get the picture, I'll say, when you get a new appliance, check the specs. Understand what the ratings are, because they matter. You can get heat pumps that don't have a good rating, and you won't get good performance. You can get them that do have a very good rating. You're going to pay more for the good one. Don't buy the cheap one. Just, it makes a big, big difference. And don't do your windows twice. Don't go from single glaze aluminum to a double vinyl and then have to go to a 4 because it's very expensive and most of the price is the labor. So this is an interesting house. It happens to be Linda's, and the neighbor had a very good company come out and went to R60 from the builder's R38 that wasn't R38 because the builder's stuff. And this was last week, or 2 weeks ago. Linda did hers later, and just think of how much heat it took to melt all that ice. And they had gone and greatly improved it from the builders, and that's hers. And hers held the snow beautifully. So she's not using near as much energy because she went to above R90. She added R60 to the builder's 38, but the builder's 38 was probably 30. It had a certificate said it's 38.
And I had them do my garage, and my neighbors did not insulate over their garage. That's the other thing you see in that.
Yeah, except,
Benefit of doing your garage and holding heat.
yeah. But the garage didn't go all the way up to the top. So it's pretty dramatic. And on the backside, where they didn't have the garage, yours was better than theirs there too. So this is, when I did my attic, I went from the builders to something like that, and I was up in the attic doing it. And since then, I've done more. I recommend do it, you know. But, okay, so this is Linda's, this symbolic, I like aerial views on a house and say what you do. So Linda did, and I can only do circles and ovals because I haven't figured out PowerPoint to do squares. But that says she did her attic, and then she also did a couple separating walls, mainly in the bedroom to their neighbor bedroom, but also the secondary bedroom office to their garage. And it did sound improvement, and that was a little bit compared to what was on the other. And then, so we're going to talk about catching and keeping energy and using this, which is an aerial view that I got off of the internet, just clicked and saved the picture on a Google map or one of those map things.
It's 6:05, so
Yeah,
how are we doing?
we're going to go a little bit longer. So the catching energy. Now, whoops, you're trying to speed me up, aren't you? So, yeah, I'm going to ask people no questions for a little bit. This is solar panels. I'm catching with solar panels. This is sun tunnels and skylights. So that's catching light energy. This is the south. This is passive solar additions. So it's catching heat that gets pumped into the house in the winter. In the summer it doesn't, because that part is shaded when the sun's high, and this part vents out. These are enclosures that also buffer, and I'm going to do one more on this. This is, those buffering things are putting an envelope around the house. In Sweden, you can put an envelope around the whole house. They don't have rules saying that you can't. For safety, in the US, you have to have egress direct to the outside out of each of your bedrooms. You don't have there. So that's a rather extreme example of doing something. So now, in addition to those, you can catch food, and so these are covering the grapes, the veggie garden, dwarf fruit trees, and even in here, inside the enclosure, dwarf citrus trees. There's a total of 6 there, 2 there, and then a couple others over in that. So out on the way to the airport, there was the Solar Home Decathlon October a year ago, and that house won, and it's an envelope. That outer area isn't heated, and none of my outer areas are heated, but the inner gets the benefit of that. And it's useful space 3/4 of the year. And the Swiss team won with that point score. This is the U.S. Department of Energy Solar Home Decathlon, which has been going since 2002. Okay, the approach that I have on doing things like this, I call it orphanage. And I get an orphan house, one that's been abandoned from a spiritual level and an energy level, and I get orphan materials. And this is where you do things cheaply. And so here's coal lumber at Lowe's. It's amazing, 75% off or more. And a 16-foot board may go 12 foot straight and then a little turn. And inside windows. And this one, the tag says, there's a patio door. All the parts are there and they're good. $1,384 for $150. Nothing wrong with it. Then it's really, there's dumpsters. The Islamic Center down here, when it was being rebuilt, they took the old roof out because they raised it, and those are SIP panels. Well, I collected some, I called the architect, found the name of the imam, called the imam. He said he'd be happy if I took them away because he was dumping them, but I wanted to ask. Don't want to steal from religious faith. And when I was layering stuff, there's one, did a couple more. So those got reused, free. Now, these doors, that and that aren't the same color. They were each $3,000 doors, and I paid $325 and $350, brand new at Lowe's. They'd come price because nobody happened to want the colors, and I was happy. So, in adding an airlock or a buffer space, concept design, collect materials, redesign to fit the materials, doors and windows, and if you want, you can paint them to match. And you build saving big money. So there's a different angle view, and you can see how this is all solar collection, and that is below there. And you see the garden, boom, boom. And I then, for keeping the energy, a lot in the attic, the garage, and I filled the attics basically completely. And then I did the walls coming around. We'll see that. Boy. So seal and insulate ceilings, upgrade walls, windows, doors, furnace, etc. And sealing air leaks. Well, you can caulk. You can use building tape, Tyvek, or Siga, which is a Swiss company, is considered the best. It's sold here in Golden by a special guy. And then a mist that you spray. Now, this is in an empty house with carpets up, and you'll see it. And this is brand new, just been done for a couple months, and demonstrations in this state just happened yesterday. And so it's like fix a flat in tires, and it's like stop leak in a radiator. Now, you don't want to carpet it in there, or you want it very well covered. It won't stick to the walls, but it'll seek out holes, and it'll fill them up. And there's a spray head, and it's putting mist out. And that mist is basically a latex paint, very thin, with silica in it that will build up in any hole. And it's amazing what it'll do. There's a blower door blowing inward to pressurize the house at 100 pascals. That's twice the pressure for a blower door test that blows outward to make a vacuum. And it puts this mist, you can kind of see. And here's the leakage over time while they're running this. And it's going out to 90 minutes there, but you leave it keep going, and it's tightening and tightening and tightening and tightening. And here's a test hole that they drilled 1/2 inch, and it filled up by the time they were done with the white stuff. And when they're done, you've got stuff on the floor that you got to clean up. It's a little bit of a mess, but there's nothing really sticking except where there were holes. All horizontal surfaces will get something, and you have to clean up. But this is a radical new thing. And here were cracks, and you see it's filled in, all those little cracks. And by the end of the day, it went from 4,200 or 4,300 down to about 700 cubic feet per minute of airflow. So it stopped that much of the leak. And before, it was equivalent to 506, all the leaks added up to 506 square inches, which is about 22 by 22 hole, if you took all the cracks. And by the end, it was 69 square inches. So that's about that big instead of that big. And they could have run it longer and it would have gone further. So on new houses, or if you're doing a total retrofit and you're taking everything up, you do it then, because you can do it. That was done without wallboard up, but it's been done more times with wallboard as an after thing. But it'll be a mess on your carpets. Okay, ceilings. Seal seam, well, thermal bridging is a concept I want to hit. There's lots of styles of ceilings. This is a vault where you've got your rafters and you got your roofing, so there's no air pocket, and the insulation is between, and this shows that the wood is conducting on a cool day. you're getting something. The yellow is warmer than the red. And that's thermal bridging. The wood is the bridge for thermal. Now, a truss. On a truss, you got, here you don't get as much insulation. If you're filling that high, you're not getting much here. And the wood is conducting, so that's not as good. And you see that on this infrared picture, the edge and up. So this was going up, there wasn't much. I blew it up to that high. Later, took the ridge off and had a professional blow in with a long and pressure it, so tamping, and getting much better. This is called tube filling your attic. You can tube fill walls also. The edge would be better if you had this new kind of truss with a big standoff. Then you don't get that bad edge problem. So walls. Well, walls have standard holes, doors and windows, and non-standard holes, which are electrical outlets, cracks here, there, and yon, around doors, around windows. So this is a 2x4 core out of a wall, and without anything in it, it's R2 to R3. Not very much. But if you fill them with cellulose, you can get R14 out of that. There's fiberglass, and it's R9. But if you then added cellulose, you get the same R14 because it compresses that fiberglass, and you get the same R14. Now, if you got a little layer of polyiso foam on the outside, you're up to R16 if you didn't but if you put cellulose, you can get it up to R20. And then if you do something like build that on the inside, you can get up to the R60s. And you finish it off to look pretty with redwood. And this is the process of doing that in the dining room. There was a heat register, so box around it, box around an outlet, and box around the window too. And then you end up, this is where that picture was, and you got a redwood wall. Now, that's not, since I did the outside also, so that's the inside, and that got to R64. With the outside, I insulated, it's got a mind of its own. Okay, I did the whole side for the kitchen. Couldn't do the inside of the kitchen because I had counters and plumbing. So I did the whole side, so I got both sides. And so I took off the siding, and I built, when I took it off, it looked like that. I built frames around the windows and frames around where I was going to do it, and then I started layering it up using, and that was all from a place called Extra Building Materials. And Extra Building Materials gets things that the thickness may not be exactly perfect, and but you build it up, you put on a building wrap. The house never had a building wrap, and then now because this was outside, I didn't want the wood sills that I just built to get weather damage, so I put aluminum wrap. And here I did the outside and the inside, and that's how I got that wall to be R104, which is ridiculous, 22 inches thick. But now, I talked about concrete being a conductor, and therefore you dig down, a spade helps loosen, a shovel lifts out. You put a tarp down so you're not killing your grass. And this is 4-inch polyisocyanurate foam, and you shove it down in and you backfill. And the only problem is on the side of South Table Mountain, you got a lot of big rocks. That's the big hard part of the whole process. Now, basements quite often come with this, the fiberglass under plastic, and And that's good. But if you do the outside, it's better because then the concrete of the wall is thermal mass stabilizing you rather than not. Now, rim joists. This is a floor joist, and over at the edge of the house is a rim joist because it's going around the rim of the house. And they stuff a little bit of fiberglass. A lot of builders in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and even in the early 2000s did not, where wires went out, where faucets went out, where gas lines went out, caulk around it, and fiberglass, the air goes right through, so a lot of air comes streaming through. And so you take that stuff out and you seal all of that, but when you are done sealing it, you put polyiso, this stuff, cut to fit in at our 7 per inch, and you get much better and you get less bugs. When I first met Linda, I conned her into doing her basement with that. And she didn't know why she's doing it, but she didn't necessarily want to tell me not to. And she's a good worker, I'll say that. She's just sitting there saying, don't talk about it.
It did seal very nicely.
It did seal. And it made it a lot warmer because it got up to R42 instead of a maybe R8. So now, this is between the garage and the kitchen. So I did that from the garage. It looks like that. I boxed around the outlet, I boxed around the door and the light switch. And this is, you notice the color is kind of matching that. That's what went between the kitchen and the garage. And where there's an overhang, builders didn't like to put anything in there. And the amazing thing is, this is only a 1/4 inch thick plywood. And when you cut these holes between your joists that are sticking out, you find interesting things. What you find are heat ducts that you've just invested on heating air, and they're exposed with only a 1/4 inch of plywood from the outside when it's below 0. So you're losing a lot of benefit of, all the furnace did. Okay, windows. They get rated on a fenestration label. You have a frame and a glazing unit, and doors similar, and installation quality matters. So windows and doors, we've seen that. Oops. So there's a lot of issues, but this is a fenestration label for the old double glazed window that didn't have any special stuff but air inside. There's a thermal plane that your grandpa used as a great new thing because it was 2 layers. And this says the U factor, and the U factor is what we use in the US. In metric areas, they use a different number, metric, but it's all in metric terms. But this, if you divide 1 by that, you get the R value of the window. So that's an R2.12 window. Now this one happens to have tempered glass, which is good. It has 66% of incident light comes in, 63% of incident heat comes in. That's the solar heat gain factor. That's good if you want passive solar. You want to get that heat. But if it's on a west window looking at the mountains, you don't want that because you're going to really burn up. Okay. And now this is low E, a 0.3 here. So that's a 3.3 R value. And it's got visual 64, solar heat gain 0.53. So that still could be intentionally collecting, but it's minimally Energy Star. Now this 0.27, so that's a 3.7 R value. And you can still do a lot better than that, but it's a low solar heat gain factor, so better for where you don't want to get a lot of heat. Now here, down to 0.19, so there's a 5.3 for your R value, getting still better. And probably not to watch them out, because it's still a pretty good solar heat gain. So this one is good if you don't want to lose heat at night in the winter, but you want to gain heat in the day. So this is a real good passive solar because you can catch it and not lose it in good light. So specs matter. All these things matter when you buy windows. They'll sell you on something like it's easy to wash a window. You know, that's what they sell you on. Now here, you're down to 0.10. So this is an R10 window. But it's also low on the solar heat gain. So great for a north window with a view. The north cold won't bother you, and you won't get, you know, you're not worrying about lighting and stuff. Boom. Now, Alpen's even making some things that get down to U factor 0.0, so that's a 12.5 for the glazing unit. Our value of 12.5, which is kind of phenomenal. That's up in Boulder County in Niwot. Then windows in the ceiling, you got sun tunnels, like up here, and they give you diffuse light. Notice, that's not a shaft of light coming down. It is very diffuse, which is good. You want diffused light. And it gives you more light to a room than the windows of 4 times the size. And that's a 22-inch. Here you have a sun tunnel roof side. This is different than the ones here, but that's okay. And then you see the sun tunnel right here on the inside throwing out the diffuse light. This is a light diffuser redirected film on a glass window that takes the sun that was coming at that angle, flips it up, and throws it back into the room. 3M makes those and other people make those. And they do a real good job of making your light that's coming in the window do a better job of lighting the space. Okay, doors. Well, if the door is not got a good R value, conduct through it. Whenever the gaskets are worn or it's left open, things, you get a convection. And if it wasn't installed very well sealed with a foam like great stuff, you get stuff passing on the edges. So here is a front door with a window, but it's a pretty good foam door. The window, you're going to have a little more loss. But compare that door to that door. This is a lot colder on a cold day because this is a much older door and they didn't put a good foam as the core in it. Now, you can add a storm door or you can add a storm room called an airlock. With an airlock, you don't get any drafts. You go in one, close it, go in the next, close it. And when you're done, you still may be cold on the north side, but you're not going to be near as cold as you were. And then you can put another airlock on if you want. And then it really makes the north side warm. So that's the current project. It's a little bit past that picture, but I got the siding on, don't have the roof on. Now, I'm going to take it from the house to the conference room airlock. Here you're looking, and then, so we're going 74 degrees in the house, and we go out, the wall is 71, but the air is 74, and we go out, and then you see the next door into the next airlock, 65 degrees in the conference room, and then going, open that door, and the outer airlock, and it's 26 degrees outside, it's 43 degrees in there, and at the bottom of the door it's 35. So the house is really buffered dramatically as you did that walk. So appliances. I want to say energy recovery ventilator. We're going to talk about all a little bit. Energy recovery ventilators. If you seal up your house, you got bad air unless you ventilate. If you ventilate by opening a window, then you're losing all your heat. So you want to ventilate by not opening windows, but by bringing air in and running it through air going out, and the heat transfers. So the air comes in fresh, the heat comes back in. Okay, then there's other appliances which I don't recommend: outdoor spas, heated swimming pools, and American Keep Up with the Joneses boondoggles. Those are why America is the per capita carbon polluting king. A little bit of morality there. For furnaces, heating equipment, we are in a very cold environment, and in that environment, most people use gas forced air. Some use gas hot water, baseboard, or under the floor. Then on electric, there's some electric central furnaces and heat pumps and other. Now this is 2015, and the thing is, the heat pumps keep getting better and better and better. They take colder and colder and colder temperatures, and you can have some that are very efficient at minus 20 degrees outside. In other words, the cold and very cold places can use heat pumps. Other areas are going to it. France is going to it. China's going to it. Japan's going to it. Korea's going to it. Germany's going to it. So some of the other things that you can use, Ron Larson's house has wood burning. That's other on that bar graph. Now this is a condensing furnace, 95.5%, and that's an 80%, which is the more recent standard that you got to meet. And so you get a label that tells you. And now this is a 97% gas boiler, and you have the water going out to underfloor or baseboard, and the water coming back. This is a mini split heat pump. It's also called ductless because these don't have heating ducts. The outside unit on mine looks like that. And it's got a SEER rating on that one of 29.3. I have one on each side of the house. The other one's 33. And the heating efficiency rating is 13.8. And that's as good as they were basically last year. This year, they're coming out with a little bit better. They keep getting better. This is in France, a 4-unit hotel string. The end ones have, the big is for the end because it's got an outside wall. The little one is for the next because it's only got a front and back wall. But they're all over. Now, natural gas prices are temporarily low from fracking, but if you didn't have fracking, this is where we were at. Our natural gas supply, normal, was being depleted. And it's going to come back to that. So depending on natural gas, is going to be expensive in the future. Gas meter. This is the pressure adjustment. There's the meter. Down here is where the shutoff is. And if you get it shut off, Jim had his just cut out, but they turn that way and they put that clamp that you can't get off because they figure you didn't pay your bill and they're shutting it off, so that's the way they do it. But anyway, that's what it looks like when it's shut off. Now, if you have no gas line, you don't have gas emergencies. Your house doesn't explode. And therefore, you don't need to call this gas emergency response truck to come and be sad when they're stuck on 44th with a train doing all their coupling and everything there. And you got your gas emergency, but Excel doesn't, can't get past that. That happened last week and I just had to take a picture of it. Okay, solar thermal, straight radiant, and rubbing hands together are other options. That is solar thermal. It gets a hot water tank in your house that you build up in that, and you hope you get through the winter. This house also has photovoltaics and passive solar, and it's got both passive that's direct and indirect. There's passive solar. Shades are down an awful lot on passive solar because you get it when you didn't necessarily want it, and so you have to vent it. So there's both direct and indirect on that. See a lot of shades down. This is John Avenson's house. He's got shades on the inside and the outside, and that's mine. Mine's indirect because I have to pump it. I collect it, and I only bring it in if I want it in. I don't bring it if I don't want it in. And it's that side is shaded. That's looking at a different angle. Okay, so direct, you get the heat without having to pump it, but the disadvantage is you may get it even if you don't want it. Traditional gas water heater. Now, of all the water heater types, if you took dollars per month, the best one is the heat pump water heater at 14.5. There's a lot of different aspects in that table I'm not going to spend a long time on. But propane for the year would be $638. Electric, direct electric, not a heat pump, $555. A small gas tank, $212 for the fuel. This is the instant natural gas instant water heater, $175, but the new heat pumps are $114, which is pretty impressive. That's at Lowe's. That's where you got yours, right, Martin?
Yep.
Energy recovery ventilation. This is the guy that's doing the GEOS project up on Indiana and 69th. Linda's got to get to her granddaughter's soccer game. And you bring in air, it goes in, old air comes out, and inside they exchange the heat and the humidity. And this keeps your CO2 in a healthy range because you got the ventilation. If the CO2 level gets over 900, you start to get a little bit less sharp. If it gets over 2,000, you're a lot less sharp. Harvard ran some studies on this, and they had some sharp guys, and they got unsharp. Interesting. Boom. Volatile organic compounds get taken out. Whenever you cook, your VOCs go up. Radon, it helps with radon, but you may need more to help with radon. It's good to have these meters in your house. And the air particles in the house, it helps with that because it's filtering. Okay. You can preserve food in refrigerators or other ways. You look at the label because it's very important. You can also take your grapes and dry them up in the attic of the passive solar. And, whoops, so there's raisins. And then clothes dryers. The two in red use energy, but a hot rock alongside the stream doesn't. And also a walk-in passive solar clothes dryer like that in the passive solar edition doesn't. And there's the clothes. So cooking. Induction stoves are better than gas for people that hate electric stoves. They're better than gas for people that hate electric stoves. They're quick on, they're quick off. So you don't.
They also come with a significant EMF.
Huh?
They also come with a significant EMF.
Okay. How far away do you perceive that?
Well, I don't know that answer, I just know when you're next to it, you're dealing with it.
Okay.
If some people are concerned about that, others are not.
Okay.
What is it you say?
Electromagnetic field.
Oh, okay.
It is inducing with a field. The energy into your magnetic pot. It has to be steel. It won't work on aluminum. Steel or iron, cast iron. Thank you for telling me that. Okay, water. Having good habits is good. I won't go long on that. So summary is catch it, keep it. You can catch it lots of ways. and keep it with good insulation in the attic and ceiling, and do the walls, and make buffer spaces like airlocks. And so reasons for it, Linda's grandkids, my grandkids. Ann Richards said, you have to find the courage to talk to people you do not know and tell them things they don't want to hear. She was a great governor. Wasn't she good? Yeah, and her daughter has been, until recently, the head of Planned Parenthood. Her daughter. And she's not now, but she's talking about the current today situation. But anyway, so people don't want to hear that if you have that outside running all day and night by the convention center, that's idiotic. It's just burning natural gas and nobody's eating at the restaurant. And that's a social disease. So anyway, I thank you for your kind attention, and I will take questions, but I've been an hour and a half since, well, almost an hour and a half, and so I've overspoke.
Okay, well, thank you.